Good morning and welcome to the New York City Council hearing of the Committee on Landmarks, Public Sightings, and Dispositions. At this time, can everybody please silence your cell phones? If you wish to testify, please go up to the Sergeant at Arms desk to fill out a testimony slip. Written testimony can be emailed to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that is landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. At this time and going forward, no one is to approach the dais. I repeat, no one is to approach the dais. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good morning. Welcome to the meeting on Subcommittee on Landmarks, Public Sightings, and Dispositions. I am Councilmember Camila Hanks, and I'm the chair of this subcommittee. Today I am joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Marte, Councilmember Nurse, Councilmember Joseph, and Councilmember Narcisse. Before we begin with today's agenda, I will remind everyone that this meeting is being held in a hybrid format. For members of the public who wish to testify remotely, we ask that you first register online, and you may do so by visiting www.council.nyc/land-use to sign up, and then sign into the Zoom and remain signed in until you have testified. For anyone that's with us today in person and wishing to testify, and if you've not already done so, please see one of our sergeants to fill out a speaker's card, and we will call your name at the appropriate time. For anyone wishing to submit written testimony on the items being heard today, we ask that you please send it via email to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Include the land use number and/or project name in the subject line of your email. Video and audio testimony will not be accepted. I will remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum will be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent unless and until called to testify. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video or recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but they may submit transcripts of such recordings to the sergeant for inclusion in the hearing record. Okay, so on today's agenda, we have a hearing on LU 158, 159, 160 in South Jamaica Gateway rezoning in Speaker Adams and Councilmember Williams District in Queens. Pre-considered land use MHANY multifamily preservation loan program in Council members Joseph, Lewis, and Narcisse's districts in Brooklyn. Okay, so you want to... Okay. So now I'm going to open up the public hearing for pre-considered LU applications brought to New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development for MHANY multifamily preservation loan program, which includes the designation of an urban development action area, approval of an urban development action project, disposition of city-owned, and approval of an Article 11 tax exemption pursuant to Section 577 of the Private Housing Finance Law for a 40-year exemption from real estate property taxation to facilitate preservation of an affordable housing project. The project is located in multiple neighborhoods throughout Brooklyn. Upon completion of rehabilitation of these 4 buildings, there will be a total of 12 rental units and 1 commercial space under the HPD Multi-Preservation Loan Program. Appearing today on this proposal is Nicholas Simmons, Director of Construction and Development, Alessandra Woodman, Project Manager of, I guess, is it Manny? It's a Hanny? Okay, like Manny Hanny. So MHANY for the public's reason. Carl Hedman, Director of Leveraged Preservation Programs, and those wishing to testify must register online by visiting the Council's website at council.nyc.landuse. Council, will you please administer the affirmation?
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record?
I think they have to do that.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I was doing a lot of things. Okay, we're going to try again. And make sure your mic is on. Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record?
Carl Hedman.
Nicholas Simmons.
Alessandra Woodman.
And do you affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and in answer to all council member questions?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Now the applicant team may begin. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Carl Hedman. I'm a director of Leverage Preservation Programs at HPD, and I'm here to start off the presentation. This morning, we'll be discussing TBK 1007 Manny. It's a multifamily preservation loan program project. ULURP number G240058 XUK. We can advance to the next slide, please. This is just a quick map showing locations of the projects within Brooklyn in the Flatbush, East Flatbush, and Canarsie neighborhoods. We'll be discussing the individual properties in the forthcoming slides. So you can advance the slide, please. The proposed action today, the applicant is the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. As mentioned previously, these buildings are part of the Multifamily Preservation Loan Program, MPLP, which designates qualified sponsors to purchase and rehabilitate city-owned, vacant, and/or occupied multifamily and mixed-use buildings in order to create low to moderate income rental housing. At closing, the properties will be sold to the sponsor, Manny Mother Gaston LLC, for a nominal $1 price per property. The property manager will be Manny Management. And the land use actions today are an urban development action area designation and an urban development action area project UDAP approval. The disposition of city-owned development sites, so those are blocks 4735, 7922, 5022, 5089, and lots 43, 22, 10, and 20, respectively. At closing, we were requesting an Article 11 tax exemption for the cluster of these buildings and a 40-year regulatory agreement preserving the affordability. So you can advance to the next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alessandra Woodman, project manager at Manny Management. The Manny Brooklyn cluster includes 4 city-owned buildings with 12 residential units and 1 commercial space. The addresses are 1073 Utica Avenue, which is currently occupied, 649 East 87th Street, which is also occupied, 996 East 46th Street, occupied, and 38 Martins, which is vacant. The cluster consists of 5 occupied units in total, 7 vacant units, and 1 vacant commercial space at 1073 Utica Avenue. Currently, there's no existing regulatory agreement because these are city-owned buildings. These properties will go through substantial and moderate rehab. Overall, the cluster, it's composed of third-party transfer buildings, MPLP, and a private cluster. In total, we have 13 units and 13 buildings and 116 units around Brooklyn. So HPD will enter into a regulatory agreement for all of these 13 buildings with substantial rehab, with a private loan, city capital subsidy, and LIHTC equity. The first building, next slide, please. So the first building is 1073 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn in the East Flatbush neighborhood, Council District 45, and Council Member Farah Lewis. It has 2 floors, 2 residential units that are occupied, 1 that is vacant, and the commercial space, which is also vacant. As you can see in the map, it's located in Utica Avenue between Tilden Avenue and Beverly Road. The next building is 996 East 46th Street in the East Flatbush neighborhood at Brooklyn, Council District 45, Council Member Farah Lewis, It has 2 floors. Both residential units are currently occupied. This is between Farragut Road and Glenwood Road in East 46th Street. Third building is 639 East 87th Street, Canarsie, Brooklyn, Council District 46, Council Member Mercedes Narcisse, 2 floors, 1 residential unit which is currently occupied. And between Foster Avenue and, can't see the name of the other one, Glenwood Road, I guess. Last building we'll talk about is 38 Martins in Flatbush neighborhood in Brooklyn, Council District 40, Council Member Rita Joseph. It has 3 floors, 6 residential units that are all vacant. And this is between, it's very close to Flatbush Avenue and Carlton Avenue.
Yeah, we go to the next slide.
Please.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Nick Simmons. I'm the Director of Construction and Development with Manny Management. I'll be going over the next few slides. The slide that we're going to be going over now is just a little introduction, brief history on Manny Management. Manny Mutual Housing Association of New York, which is the acronym for Manny, is a 501c3 not-for-profit. We've been around for nearly 40 years. As you can see on the slide, we have a portfolio of around over 220 buildings, over 3,000 units that are all for low and moderate income individuals and families, and about 10,000 square feet of commercial space across New York City. We're primarily in East New York, Brownsville, East Brooklyn neighborhoods, and South Bronx, but we are also in East Harlem and a little bit in Queens, Jamaica, Queens area. You go to the next slide. So, can we go one slide back? Thank you. So Manny's mission is to increase affordable housing for low-income and moderate-income families with a focus on preservation and deep affordability. We aim to improve. We work with building and community residents to get involved with their communities and neighborhoods. And our another mission is to improve the community conditions and increase neighborhood involvement. Next slide, please.
So to give you a summary of the work for this cluster, it will be a substantial rehab to address 38 Martins, which has been vacant for quite some time. And then there will be a moderate rehab for the other 3 buildings, 1073 Utica, 639 East 87, and 996 East 46. Just to give a little context, these buildings are occupied with families that have been there for a long time. There has been a lot of conversation with residents, a lot of engagement in which they have expressed that they do not want to be relocated. For them, they've lived there their whole life. It's their home. So we changed the scope and worked around them to be able to keep them in place while we do the work. That's what they want, and we'll do it that way. So like we were saying, it's 12 units across these 4 buildings, and we're not changing the unit mix. It will be 12 units of affordable housing after our renovations. There's 1 commercial space at 1073 Utica, which will be also renovated for any new tenant to move there and then make it their own space based on their needs. There's 10,062 gross square feet of residential space and 810 gross feet of commercial space in total for these 4 buildings. Existing tenants will be offered a preferential rent to preserve their affordability. That's really important for Manny and HPD. And for the whole cluster, which is 13 buildings, we'll set a 15% set aside for formerly homeless individuals or families. The scope of work, kind of the highlights of what it includes, if we go to the next slide, please, will be roof replacement, facade work, window replacement, electrical upgrades, boiler replacement, and in-unit repair, which focuses for the mod rehabs in new kitchens and new bathrooms, as well as new flooring, painting, anything that is needed so it looks and it is brand new. The construction for the whole cluster, the 13 buildings, is anticipated to last 27 months. We are planning on doing it in 2 phases, though, because it's 13 buildings, and that way residents, it will take around 13 months for each phase. While residents are some in place and some relocated. So to give you a unit mix, like I said, we are not changing the unit count. We have, from those 4 buildings, 12 units, there's 9 one-bedrooms. There is 3 two-bedrooms for the total of 12, and that's what it will look like after renovation. If we look at the AMIs, the units that are currently occupied will be at 40% AMI, which is 5 units, and the vacant units will be at 75% AMI, which is 7 units. Oh, if we can move 2 slides, please. So yeah, that's what I was talking about, the AMI. And here, just to give you an overall of the project, like I'm saying, it's 13 buildings. It's scattered around many neighborhoods in Brooklyn, and it's 116 units in total, and from those, we're looking at almost half of them being at 40% AMI. That's our strong, number, and then we see at 24 units that are going to be at 50% AMI, 14 units will be at 60%, 13 at 70, and 7 at 75 with 1 super unit. The plan has been to do that tiered, so there's a broad spectrum of residents that could move into those units. And total, like I said, it's 116 units, the whole project. That's it.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to recognize some of my colleagues, some of my colleagues, if they have any questions or remarks. Councilmember Narcisse.
Good morning, and thank you for being here, and thank you for answering almost all my questions before. This is a great project. The whole idea we're in a crisis, and keeping housing affordable for those in needs is always a great thing in our city. And in my district, and one of the things too, you prevent those housing you prevent them from being an eyesore in our community too, because you're fixing them. And my question is, while the construction is going on, how much involved the tenants are because they're already occupied? Are you keeping them up to date on a regular basis? Is it contractors? Are you introducing the contractors, whoever doing the construction, with the tenants, and to understand the rule and regulation, what can be done? Those things are being discussed.
Absolutely, we'll have tenant meetings with our team, HPD, the contractors, and the architects to go through what is the next steps, what is the plan, how does the actual renovation is going to be with the tenants in place, so they'll feel more comfortable of what's next. So when we do renovation with tenants in place, we normally work by sectors. So, for example, we're doing the kitchen. We try and leave some space for a temporary kitchen for them. And every day, the contractors work there and they clean the space after. So residents could be living there in some way comfortably while we do the work.
Okay. My next question is the roofing. Because to do a complete roof, how that going to be working while the person the house is occupied?
Yeah, just to answer your last question, we also went to all the residents to get them to sign a tenant layout to make sure that the layout that they're going to be coming to, will be eventually built, is something that they're going to be comfortable with, so that all the residents have been showed what the layouts will look like, and we try to get all of their sign-offs, and I think we did pretty well with that. In regards to the renovations, Manny's bread and butter is doing renovations with tenants in place. The majority of our portfolio is our existing buildings, so they do need to get renovated, and our vacancy is about 2% out of the 3,000 apartments, so it's very low vacancy turnover. So in order to do a renovation with tenants in place and not to be so disruptive, we try to use a contractor that has experience. So that's the first off. We're not going to bid the project out to a contractor that has never worked with the resident in place. Specifically for like a roof, they're going to look at the weather to make sure they're not doing it during the raining or snowing season. And based off the weather, they will create a schedule. They'll put down a temporary roof, tarping until the permanent roof could go down. And if there is a case where there is a leak during the construction of the roof, Manny will be responsible for any damages that does happen, because it is construction, stuff does happen. But for the most part, from my experience, I've done maybe about 20 buildings with roofs with residents in place. I've only had one instance like that, and that was just because a freak rainstorm came out of nowhere. And we do boilers too. We change boilers with residents in place. We give them temporary heating devices, whether that's a in-unit electrical heater, or we set them up with a temporary boiler that you might see when you're driving across New York City that are parked on the street in front of the building with the vent that goes towards the building. So we work with the contractors, and from our experience, we talk with the residents and we do the coordinating with the residents. We don't allow the contractors to do the coordinating because it helps our relationship, and after the construction, it helps us maintain a good relationship going forward after, and they keep it going.
In case the house become not livable, do you have plan to get those folks in temporarily placed in a hotel or something? Is any kind of things like that in place?
Yeah, so for the 4 buildings that we're focused on today, so I think the one building that will need substantial is actually the vacant one on 1073 Utica, so we won't have to relocate anyone since it's Martin, sorry, 38 Martin. So that it is vacant, so there won't be any relocation. In the portfolio, there is another building that has some structural issues, so there will need to do some temporary relocating. And how we do temporary relocations when that time comes, we sometimes use a broker to find available apartments that are of the same size bedroom, so they're not downsizing or upsizing. Manny also has buildings in the neighborhood, so when we have vacant units and that are ready to be rented, we use those as temporary relocation apartments sometimes. And I think for this project, one of the ideas is to work on the vacant buildings first, and then then those buildings will have vacant units, and if we need to relocate anyone, we could use those buildings, so we wouldn't have to go to the market or a broker.
My last question was how is the condition of those places that occupy now? Are they livable for real?
So what Manny has done since since the TBT round was designated, I think it was 2018, so it was a very long time ago, we've managed the buildings. So what we do is we try to keep it in living order, because the residents still have to pay their rent. So if there is issues, we do try to take care of them. When it's a big capital improvement, we try to ask them to be patient, because the renovations can take place. But if there's a heating issue, leaks, any emergency issues, those get addressed right away. But I think like more cosmetic or like flooring, you can't really do that with the resident in place. So those stuff, we ask the residents to be patient. Some of them are patient, some of them it's been since 2018, so they're probably it's time. And understandably, I think they're right when it is time to get the work done.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, my colleagues.
Thank you so much. Before I recognize Councilmember Lewis, I'd like to recognize that Councilmember Felice and Councilmember Salam are also here. So now we have Councilmember Joseph for some questions.
Good morning, thank you. 38 Martins, you said it was 6 vacant units?
Yes.
Correct.
And what are the makeups going to be? 1, 2 bedrooms?
I believe they're all 2 bedrooms.
All 2 bedrooms? Good. And in terms of affordability?
I'm sorry, I'm wrong.
Tell me.
4 one-bedrooms, 2 two-bedrooms.
4 one-bedrooms and 2.
Yes, 2 two-bedrooms.
Thank you. And in terms of affordability, will there be a community outreach part?
Yes, so we're open to for the entire cluster, because this is not the only building that we do need to fill. We will be going to the community, and we are open to recommendations from you guys if you have any in regards to.
And you said the renovations will, I know it's a vacant, I've seen it, it's in my district, I'm familiar with the property. When I first got in, I kept on asking who owns it, nobody could tell me. They said there was an owner, but nobody knew where. In terms of affordability, we talked about that, and that should be what are the AMIs for that?
So those are all vacant, so we're setting all of the vacant ones at 75% AMI.
Why so high?
Well,
If the median income in Flatbush, where it is, it's on Martins between Flatbush and Bedford.
Understood. Yes, we agree. I don't believe that AMIs really reflect the neighborhood. All of our buildings and all of our neighborhoods, we feel the same way. However, the project, the amount of work that is needed, the amount of work that is needed is a lot throughout the cluster. So what we wanted to do is we didn't, for the residents that were in place, that's why we wanted to leave those at 40% AMI as low as we could try to make sure that we're not making them rent burden. And then since these are vacant units, we figured that it might be easier to, fill them with new residents that, could afford them. And
That doesn't come from the neighborhood. If we're really talking about affordability, which is what we're facing right now in this city, it's an affordability crisis. We need to look at the AMI, and that part of the neighborhood, that AMI does not reflect that part of the neighborhood. So I'm going to advocate on behalf of my constituent always to make sure it reflects the needs of the community. If we want to make sure we're not displacing anyone and we want to keep folks here, we have to offer them. You don't want to rent burden, but we also want to make sure neighbors stay in the communities as well. If we're offering it to the community, it should go to community boards, right? So let me know if that's something we need to have a side conversation. I'm open for that, but 75 AMI is outrageous.
Okay, no, I understood. I think we talked with our executive director that wasn't able to make today. It just had emergency. We are open, to suggestions in regards to the setting the AMIs. For our portfolio of buildings, we also do have preferential rents for some tenants for cases like this where we're not trying to rent burden them, or we can't fill the units because of the neighborhood aren't at that AMI like you mentioned. So yes, we would love to
definitely have a side conversation. Right now is that's what all New Yorkers are faced across the board.
Agreed.
And we don't want none of our residents to be displaced, and we're seeing more and more, and as you may, and I was an educator, so most of my kids, 114,000 kids in the New York City public schools live in shelters, and that's opening a door for a family to enter. So we really need to look at how we address neighborhoods. We can't do a cookie cutter model for a whole neighborhood. It has to meet the needs of the neighborhood where they are. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I'm going to read a statement from Councilmember Lewis. So thank you, Chair Hanks, which is me, for allowing me to submit this statement. Management to oversee the rehabilitation of 2 properties in my district. I want to applaud Manny for their remarkable work in providing affordable housing across our city. However, I must express my concerns regarding HPD's recent performance in my district. My experience with HPD has been marked by a troubling lack of communication, coordination, particularly on these 2 major projects. The Article 11 at Flatbush Gardens suffered an inadequate communications plan with tenants and surrounding community. Additionally, the Bethany Senior Terraces, one of our flagship affordable housing developments, was launched with insufficient outreach and notification to the residents who need it most. It would be a disservice to my constituents to support this project without clear safeguards and assurances from HPD. We need to know how our communities will be engaged in future housing lottery efforts, how current residents will be kept housed during construction, and how we will address issues that may arise during the 40-year regulatory agreement. I look forward to hearing about these assurances today as we assess on how to move forward with this application. Next, council, is there any members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
Yes. There are two members of the public. Okay. Oh, sorry. I got you.
Thank you. This applicant panel is now excused. So wait, read this first or this first? This first. As a reminder, if I or any council members have questions, witnesses are asked to remain online or stay seated at the microphone after their testimony until they are excused. For those participating online, once you or your group has been excused following any questions, participants may continue to view live stream broadcasts of this hearing in the council website. Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak, and please do not begin until the Sergeant-at-Arms has started the clock. We will now hear from the first panel, which is Alessandra Woodman and Nicholas Simmons. These seem like... That was them.
Oh, that was them.
Yeah.
I apologize. Those were given.
Pardon me, just please hold.
Okay, we have no members of the public signed up to speak.
Sorry. With there being no other members of the public who wish to testify regarding preconsidered LU Manny Multifamily Preservation Loan Program, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now I will open the public hearing for LU 158, 159, and 160, the South Jamaica Gateway rezoning, an application by the New York City Department of Housing Preservation Development and several private applicants for a zoning map change, a zoning text amendment, and a designation of an urban development action area, approval of an urban development action area project, and disposition of city-owned property. These actions are to facilitate the development of 2 mixed-use residential community facility buildings containing approximately 143 affordable housing units in Jamaica, Queens, and Speaker Adams' Council District and Councilmember Dr. Williams' District. Appearing today on this proposal is Annabelle Monnier, Senior Queens Planner of HPD, Jack Hanley, Founder and Principal of Fulcrum Properties, Brian White, Chairman of Thomas White Jr. Foundation. Those wishing to testify must register online visiting the council's website at council.nyc./land use. Council, will you please administer the affirmation?
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record? Check your mic, please.
I don't know. Annabelle Meunier.
Brian White. Jack Heaney.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and in answer to all council member questions?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. For the viewing public, if you have an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Hanks and members. And I am a senior planner with HPD's Queens and Staten Island Planning Team in the Office of Neighborhood Strategies, and I'm here to present the South Jamaica Gateway rezoning project today. And I'm joined by Jack Heaney, founder and managing principal of Fulcrum Properties, who is Thomas White Jr. Foundation, one of the nonprofit partners for this project. And we're also joined today in the audience by Kevin Paris, Director of the Queens and Staten Island Planning at HPD, as well as the other members of the development team, Ira Brown, who is the Director of Development and General Counsel for the Briarwood Organization, and Bernard Warren, Managing Member of Moses Soul Realty, as well as other HPD staff on this project who are present. And we thank you for the opportunity to present this project today. Next slide, please. This is an application by the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the Development Team, which is a joint venture between Fulcrum Properties, the Briarwood Organization, and Moses Soul Realty. And importantly, the nonprofit partners, the Gaudian Fellowship, and the Thomas White Jr. Foundation. Pastor Kendra Manigault represents the Gaudian Fellowship and could not make it in person, but is observing remotely. Next slide, please. This application was certified into ULURP on May 28th, 2024. The proposed land use actions and proposed project are listed here, and we will go over these later in the presentation. Next slide, please. The majority of this project area, as shown here, was zoned in its current designation of R5D with a C14 commercial overlay as part of the city-sponsored Jamaica Plan rezoning approved in September 2007. The Jamaica Plan was a comprehensive planning and rezoning strategy for a 368-block area designed to encourage the economic revitalization of downtown Jamaica, as well as encourage the provision of affordable housing, while preserving the adjoining residential homeowner neighborhoods. Prior to 2007, the rezoning area was zoned R4 with a nation established in 1961 when the zoning resolution of the City of New York was first enacted. Next slide, please. The two HPD-owned lots in the proposed project area were later included as part of the Revitalizing Neighborhoods New Infill Homeownership Opportunities Program, or NIHOP, and Neighborhood Construction Program, or NCP, request for qualifications, published in 2014. In 2018, this development team was awarded the cluster included in South Jamaica, and later brought on their nonprofit partners and worked with HPD to create a separate proposal and project plan that would facilitate the production of more affordable housing, helping meet a stated need in this area. Next slide, please. This slide shows the existing conditions on both sites. The project's objectives are to create a new R7A C14 district with MIH requirements that would allow for approximately 143 units of new low-income or workforce housing units on two underutilized commercial properties where no housing currently exists, to provide worship and office spaces for these two existing nonprofits owners that have been providing worship and social services to South Jamaica for over 40 years, and finally to enhance the public realm along Tuskegee Airman Way and Guyar Brewer Boulevard with new streetscaping, including trees and street furniture. And community benefits would include Community Board 12 resident preference for 20% of the apartments, expanded community services, and MWBE and local subcontractor hiring. Next slide, please. Once again, the proposed actions as certified on May 28th are, number one, a zoning map amendment from R4, R5B, R5D, and R5D with a C14 overlay to R7A with no change in the overlay for portions of block fronts on blocks 10129 and 10161. You can see the map comparison shown. The rezoning area is highlighted in yellow for visibility. Number two, a zoning text amendment to the New York City Zoning Resolution Appendix F inclusionary housing designated areas and mandatory inclusionary housing areas, to establish the rezoning area as a mandatory inclusionary housing area. And number 3, an urban development action area designation and approval of an urban development action area project for proposed development A, including the disposition of city-owned of the city-owned portion of development site A, or block 10161, lots 3 and 9, to the developer. Next slide, please. The 2 development sites for this proposal are shown here. Development site A is located at 106-01 Guy R. Brewer Boulevard on the eastern side of the street and comprises Queens Block 10161, lots 1, 3, and 9. Lot 1 is privately owned, and lots 3 and 9 are city-owned under HPD jurisdiction. Lot 9 is not within the proposed rezoning area. And Site A is the site that would be subject to the UDAP action, and this site is located in Council District 27. Development Site B is located at 162-02 Tuskegee Airman Way on the southern side of the street at the intersection of Union Hall Street, and consists of 3 privately owned lots, Queens Block 10129, lots 1, 3, and 4, and this site is located in Council District 28. I will now pass the presentation over to Jack Heaney, who will discuss the proposed developments and affordability and speak a little more on the nonprofit partners.
Thank you, Annabelle. So zooming in on the development sites, Site A, which is the home of Guardian Fellowship Church, this will be 100% affordable senior housing, 79 units total, contained in a 9-story building that'll be following AIR's zoning rules. Oh, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. Thank you. The gross square footage of the Site A is approximately 42,000 square feet. The ground floor will be activated by Guardian Fellowship's new home, which will be approximately 4,000 square feet on the ground floor and cellar. Interior recreation spaces for the senior residents, as well as an outdoor garden space that's adjacent to the project. In addition to the housing units above, there'll be several terraces and interior recreation spaces, again, for use by the senior residents. Next slide, please. Site B is the home of the Thomas White Foundation. This will follow mandatory inclusionary housing zoning. It'll be approximately 66 units, again, 9 stories. The ground floor will be activated by Thomas White Foundation's new home with units above, as well as several exterior terraces for resident recreation and a rooftop that's accessible as well. The Thomas White's new home will be approximately 12,000 square feet on the ground floor and cellar, and there'll be parking for approximately 16 spaces. Next slide, please. So gearing back to Development Site A, this will be 100% affordable through HPD's SARA program. So all of the residents, all the units will have project-based vouchers. Within this mix, there'll be 30% of the residents will be set aside for formerly homeless seniors who will be referred to the project through DHS and a nonprofit social service provider. The remaining units will be set at approximately 40% AMI of income, but again, the project as a whole will be 100% project-based vouchers to ensure that the rent remains affordable for folks who are primarily on Social Security income. Next slide, please. Development Site B, which is the Thomas White Foundation's home. This will be developed through the NCP program. So this will be a multifamily mixed income project. 15% of the units will be set aside for formerly homeless individuals. The bulk of the units will be set at 50% of AMI, and the remaining will be at approximately 80% AMI. This will be a mix of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3 bedrooms to accommodate larger families in the neighborhood. Next slide, please.
That'll be my, okay. Thank you, Jack. This slide is just showing where we are in terms of ULURP. The project was reviewed and voted favorably by the community board, and I'll point out that the timeline was short in terms of ULURP, but this project has actually been in the making for many years, and the development team and the nonprofit partners conducted thorough outreach with the community. So the board was pretty familiar with this application by the time of their vote. Thank you to Brian. And the project also received a favorable vote by Queens Borough President Donovan Richards' office and was approved unanimously by the City Planning Commission on September 11th. Next slide, please. This concludes our presentation. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you so much. I do have one question. The borough president recommended a 30% MWBE contracting goal. Does HPD have targets for reaching the MWBE goal for contracting?
So both HPD and the developer team and the contractor team who's with us today intend to meet and exceed that goal of 30%. And we'll be working in partnership actually with the Thomas White Foundation. Brian, I don't know if you want to say a few words about your job training programs.
Yes. Good afternoon. The Thomas White Jr. Foundation, formerly JCAP Foundation, founded by City Councilman Thomas White, the late Thomas White, has been involved in community empowerment for over 40 years. We are currently providing OSHA training and also computer professional training classes to the residents of the community to help them in a lot of the economic development that is going on in Southeast Queens right now. As a member of the JFK Redevelopment Project, we are putting people on a list of job placement list for the JFK project through that. And also we are working with our developer team to make sure that the members of the community that can meet to help build our projects. So we are reaching out into the community, and we do have an outreach program for that and a training program for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Okay. Any of my colleagues, would you like to? Seeing none, thank you. This applicant panel is now excused.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify in this item?
Is there a Mr. Warren who's here to testify? Oh, you were with. Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify on that. Are there any other members of the public? There are no members of the public who wish to testify.
Will there be no other members of the public who will wish to testify on LU 158, 159, and 60, South Jamaica Queens Gateway rezoning? This public hearing is now closed. So that concludes today's business. I would like to thank the members of the public, my colleagues, subcommittee council, land use staff, and Sergeant at Arms for all your participation today. This meeting is hereby adjourned.